The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. From hot dogs to cool kitties, this is Darkside of the Pooch.
Yes, and we will save it for the air. This is our show, Darkside of the Pooch. He is Dr. Rab Stewart, a man that I've been in touch with more than I'd like to admit over the last few days. I'm Tony Kurre, and this is a show about pet care, kitty cats, dogs, primarily at the Rossbridge Animal Hospital, 208-0301. Another phone call I've been making quite a bit. They do wonderful work, and that's why he's the best. That's why we do the show here. It's brought to you by Ed's Pet World. They've been in business for 50 years down there in beautiful Homewood. They've got every type of exotic pet. They don't do dogs and cats, but they do everything else. I got a chinchilla that's just fantastic. Been really enjoying its company. And, of course, also Sasquatch, comics and toys and comics down there in Homewood as well. They do wonderful work when it comes to 60s, 70s, and 80s toys. Unopened in boxes they buy, sell, and trade. So, let me set the table here for you because I think we spoke about this. I have two dogs, Frisco and Rainer. Frisco's my Havanese. Rainer's an Australian Shepherd. And I'm 58 years old. To my knowledge, the entire time I lived home with my mom and dad and every time after that, I've always taken my dogs in for annuals. I'll get behind on shots once in a while, flea, pet, stuff like that. And I think some people probably get busy and they forget about things like that. But I've never brought an animal in that I was really seriously concerned about, and that happened this past week. Tell everybody basically what's happened to my Havanese over the last 3 or 4 weeks and just how quickly it can turn. I mean, I'm because I'm in a funk. It's kind of crazy, and I'm so glad I have you on my side doing this because I don't know if I trust anybody else with my family member.
Well, there's a few things that we have going on that so there's a lot of things in veterinary medicine and human medicine too, for that matter, that are not primary problems, but they're secondary problems. They're basically symptoms. So we are, for the big tests that will hopefully give us some diagnosis, we are still waiting for. Those are pending. Mm-hmm. But here are the symptoms that we're seeing. There's blood loss from somewhere, or we're not making red blood cells, or we're destroying them. So he's a little bit anemic. Okay. And his protein levels are low. And when I say protein, I'm talking about albumin and globulins. Those are proteins that are made by the liver, but they're also made by basically the immune system, stimulated by the immune system. And when they get low, they are usually being lost somewhere, either through the urine or through the GI tract. And in Frisco's case, we are confident that he is losing those proteins through the GI tract. Mm-hmm. He also has a lot of abdominal fluid. And abdominal fluid can be blood, or it can be kind of a mixture of basically it's like a transudate. Like sometimes it's a bunch of like white blood cells, or it can be lymph fluid from the lymph system, or it can be a combination of some of those things. So in his case, it doesn't appear to be blood because we removed some of that. We ultrasounded his abdomen today and we removed some of that fluid, and that's part of what we're going to send off. And they're going to tell us kind of what makes up that fluid. And we've also got some tests pending to tell us if he's got some type of infectious disease, and that's why he's anemic. We're also going to see if maybe he has something called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency. So that's just where they don't really digest their food really well. We're going to check his folate, cobalamin, and his TLI, which is trypsin-like immunoreactivity stuff. So right now we know what his secondary concerns are, and we're addressing those. We're trying to get his protein up with some fluids that will pull some of that protein back into his blood vessels. And we're giving him lots of high-calorie food, which he's eating well. Good. So right now we're just kind of putting a Band-Aid on some stuff until we can figure out what's going on.
He's had a lot of constipation issues his entire life. I mean, he's one of those dogs that he's got to squat. He'll squat 3 or 4 different times until it comes out, and normally comes out. He's the one dog I don't mind pooping in the house because it's so easy to pick up. It's never running or anything like that. Obviously, the last couple of days, it's just been pure liquid. But is that an indicator at all? You talk about the GI tract. Is that an indicator of all, perhaps, of an issue? Because we came in, and I know the anal glands are something that need to be cleaned out. We had that done the last time I came in to see you, and I spoke about, it just seems like it always comes out regular, if you will, but it seems like he has a difficult time pooping. Is that a problem?
The diarrhea is definitely a problem, and it kind of it's a symptom that goes along with what we're seeing, because his intestines are also very dilated on the ultrasound. So that goes along with inflammation of the GI tract. So, my hope is that it's something relatively simple, that can, for example, probably the best thing it could be is the pancreatic insufficiency that we talked about. Mm-hmm. Usually treat that with B12 injections. You also treat it with a digestive enzyme that you put on their food. It's a pretty easy fix if we can diagnose that. But unfortunately, when they have these symptoms, almost every disease process you can think of is on the table. Yeah. Addison's disease, where their body's not producing enough steroid, is on the table. Intestinal cancer is on the table. Inflammatory bowel disease, which would be an autoimmune disease. So he does have some serious symptoms, and he's a sick puppy. So we're just kind of in that waiting game now, where we wait for some results.
My son, we're sitting in the waiting room, and he's like, "What if he has cancer?" This was 3 weeks ago, and I was like, "Stop! He doesn't have cancer. He's fine." You're of course, my son is a hypochondriac, and he's anxiety issues, everything else. The next thing you know, you mentioned that C word earlier this morning. How? And again, let me set the table here. This is a healthy dog. I love my animals. I take care of my dogs. He eats twice a day. He's a loving part of our family. I think he's about 7.5 or 8 years old. So he's not. And again, when we were talking about the situation we were in today, if he was 13, 14, I certainly would look at it differently. But I'm like, this dog's not old enough to be going through what he's going through right now. What normally, for people out there, like, what just happened here? What are some of the symptoms? Is this just part of nature? Is this part of life? I mean, I know that the humans, we get sick 4 or 5 times a year, and we know how to treat those things. It doesn't seem like dogs, occasionally they'll have some type of diarrhea, or maybe they'll choke on a chicken bone or something like that, and we just kind of let it go. This is a situation where it just kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, how often does this happen?
It happens a lot.
Yeah.
Because, this is one of the, the downsides of having a pet, because I would assume that these issues probably started way sooner than we think, but they can't tell us that they're not feeling well. So, for example, we had a dog that I've been taking care of for 10 years, and the dog stopped eating for about a week, and the owners were, in and out of the house and on vacation and this kind of stuff. So they come in, and it's got some lymph node enlargement, and we run some tests on it, and it's either got lymphoma or leukemia. Jeez. And they're like, I'm on a first name basis with these people. I've known them a long time. And they said, well, Rab, we just don't understand. It's only been a week. Like, he's only been sick for a week.
Yeah.
And I say, no, he's been sick for a lot longer than that. He just didn't have a way to tell you.
Yeah.
And, that's probably what goes on in a lot of cases. And people, it seems that it came on quite suddenly, when in reality, they just can't tell you that they're not feeling well.
Was do you believe the cough had anything to do with this, or was it 2 different things?
I think it was 2 different things. I think that the cough, because he is having some GI issues, yeah. I think the cough was probably from him throwing up a little bit and maybe aspirating some of that vomit. Uh-huh. And then he developed a mild respiratory infection, which we fixed with the antibiotics and the steroids.
Yeah, and I'm gonna step up here, and I'm gonna say this because I think it's a good public service for everyone who's listening to the show. We have thousands of people who do that and know how much I love my animals. I've had chickens, I've had goats, I've had everything. I had snakes. I came in to see you about 2.5 or 3 weeks ago, and you weren't there. And I worked with one of your associates who are fantastic. And at that point in time, we really didn't have a good idea of what was going on with him because of this cough. At that time, he had lost a little weight, was a little thin, wasn't really being himself, but was still running around the yard, could go up and down stairs, wagging his tail, doing things that dogs do. And she had given me a checklist of all these things that she felt like he needed to have at that point. B12 was one of those things. Some type of liquids or some type of enhancement. You were going to give him some type of protein, this, that, and the other. And at that point in time, as a responsible owner, but also one that's on a budget, it gets to that sticky area. We've talked about this on the show a million times. What are you going to do? So I had to sit down with my kids, and we were supposed to go to the beach this summer. We've gone every year. And my son told me, if it means the beach or Frisco Dog, I want you to know that we want you to do everything you can to help Frisco Dog. And this is before we knew how serious it was. And I said, it's going to be fine. He'll be fine. And we'll go on our vacation and everything else. And it's just gotten to a point now where it's kind of like that's real. And I feel like, I brought this animal into the world. I took it as my own, and it is my child. And I need to do everything I can to save it and give it the best life it possibly can. That's what I'm supposed to do. And had I followed through and done some of the things that your associate had told me 2 or 3 weeks ago, I'm not saying we wouldn't be in the same position, but I can't help but think we would be in a better situation than he is right now. I called you point blank and said, listen, obviously I'm at a budget. I'm at $500 or $600 here. What's the minimally I can do? And that was the antibiotics and obviously the cough medicine, and it worked. But at that point in time, it looks like I feel like I probably could have done a little bit more. And I just want to say that because I think some people, and you're not like this. See, you go into some of these places and you feel like they're trying to upsell you on things. And I'm like, a B12 shot for a dog? I've been offered mouth-to-mouth resuscitation for my dogs. I'm like, mouth-to-mouth resuscitation for my Freddy dog? I'm like, hell no, you're not giving my dog mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. It was like $1,500. And I said, I'll give him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. I bet I felt like, and this was one of these whole night places, and I felt like I was being upsold. I really was. And next thing you know, I'm walking out with a $2,000 bill from a snake bite. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I trust you, and I know you, and that's why I feel so comfortable in saying, let's go for this and do everything we can to save this animal. But I do want to tell people, if the veterinarian is telling you, hey, listen, I think it's a good idea to do this, then it probably is a good idea to do that. Or you could be in my position and be back 2 or 3 weeks later and then, be really touch and go. So I just want to share that with everyone out there. You can spend a couple $100 now, or you can spend a couple $1,000 later. It's it is what it is.
Man, but there's so many people that, you're in the majority. That's what most people will do. It's, let's see if we can fix what we feel like is the main issue that we're concerned about. And, we can always come back the next day. We hear that every day. And a lot of times it works out. But the issue that you get into sometimes, issue that people get into is at some point we run into a time crunch where we're waiting on these tests, and some of them are overnight tests, some of them take 2 days, some of them take 3 days. If you want a pathologist to look at anything, it might take 5 working days. And
why does it take us so long?
Well, so these reference labs, they have all types of veterinarians that work for them. And one of the main things we send them are tissue samples and fluid samples for pathologists to physically look at under a microscope. Okay. So, these companies only have so many pathologists on staff. And sometimes it's really incredible that they'll say allow 3 to 5 working days. And some days we'll have it back the next day. Some days it'll be 2 days. Some days it will be 5 days. And it really just depends on how slammed they are.
Yeah.
But so sometimes people get into a position where we're up against the clock and we don't want to have to wait. And sometimes we don't have time to wait. And that's the, crappy thing about it, because as I mentioned with my other clients who, their dog passed away, sometimes it can be too late to get the results because the dog has not felt well for months, but they can't tell you that.
Yeah,
They can't.
My daughter, question from Lila. She's not here, but she wanted me to ask you. First of all, is this something the Frisco dog? Is it something that's contagious? How do you know if something like this is contagious? And if the older dog had the same symptoms, would he handle it differently because of his size difference?
Right now, I do not believe what he has is contagious from dog to dog. Now, it's possible that he has an infectious disease that maybe he picked up from an insect, or the most likely thing is from like a tick, or maybe a cat scratch or a cat bite or something like that. But as far as being able to spread that to another dog, meaning contagious, I don't think that we have anything like that. But contagious and infectious are two different things. Because you can catch an infection from something that you then cannot pass on to something else. Okay. And I think if Frisco does have something, he has something infectious and not contagious. But I mean, if you have something that's gonna really wreak havoc in one dog, it's probably gonna do a number on another one too.
Okay. And so you mentioned this, and I didn't really think about this. And just to show and prove the severity of the situation, when I reached out to you on Friday, and I knew that you were only open a half a day on Saturday, or did I reach out to you Saturday? I'm not sure. Anyway, I knew that he was going in Monday. My kids were like, when are you going to take the dog in? I was like, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I was like, and by then it was like almost too late. Hopefully it won't be. And you were like, listen, and you texted me back, and you're like, bring him in Monday morning at 7:00 if he makes it till then. And I'm like, wait a minute, makes it till then? And right away I'm on the phone calling you, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And you're like, Tony, this is a 3 to 4 to 5 pound dog. I mean, when it gets something, man, and it's just like a human being. I would imagine if it's your grandma who's 83 pounds soaking wet in the hospital, she gets pneumonia, she's gonna deal with it a lot differently than if I've got it, and it could kill her. And so yeah, but man, I just feel so blessed. Not only to have you as a friend and talk me through it, because I've never loved an animal as much as I love this animal. I've had dogs my entire life, ever since I was born. I've had dogs and cats, and they were part of our lives. But just for what I've gone through in my own personal life over the last 4 or 5 years, I've gotten really close to both my dogs, and it's just and I know he's in great care and great handings, and I appreciate you taking care of my boy. Of course. We'll keep people updated here. Did think interesting. This just broke about 2 or 3 hours ago. Nationwide Insurance just announced a little after noon today they're dropping the policies of over 100,000 animals nationwide. Nationwide Insurance, nationwide, because of the rising cost of pet insurance. Several people had mentioned and had followed this story and said they were paying up to $800 a month for pet insurance, which, like, I don't pay $800 a month. So, but they've been told that they're no longer going to have a health insurance on their animals. The funny thing is evidently it's not supposed to have anything to do with the age or the breed of the animal, but they're finding out that the majority of these animals are over 10 years of age, and they're smaller breeds. And now these people who are used to having insurance can't get insurance, because once you've been denied insurance by somebody, what does that do? The next insurance company's like, I'm good. Can you talk about that a little bit? They said it's rising costs in veterinarian care. Maybe it's just we care more. Maybe we're doing more for our animals. Can we put a silver lining on this?
I mean, $800 a month. I don't.
I mean, dude.
Listen. I'm a small business owner, and I provide health insurance for my staff, and their health insurance is anywhere near that.
Yeah, I'm like
so. I mean, I would love to know what area of the country we're talking about. I mean, are we talking about LA? Are we talking about New York, Denver, Seattle? Like, yep. What?
I could find out for you as we continue to do this story.
There's some people out there charging a lot more than we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. Nationwide Insurance has plans to cancel pet insurance coverage for about 100,000 animals across the nation, citing rising veterinarian costs. The cancellation of thousands of coverage plan to take place between now and next summer as part of the company's efforts to maintain long-term viability and profitability, it said in its statement. As pet lovers ourselves, we understand the emotions connected to the protection of our family pets, inflation, the cost of veterinarian case, and other factors have led to recent underwriting changes and the withdrawal of some products that have to do, of course, with insurancing some of our dogs in some of the states that we cover, difficult actions that are necessary to ensure our financial sustainability. So it doesn't say necessarily what states. The popularity of pet insurance has increased over the years, with 24% of pet owners now having coverage. So it doesn't say particularly what state we're talking about, but basically the entire United States. And it's coming from national. So I don't know. This is something brand new to me. When I first heard about pet insurance, I thought, what do we do? What are we talking about? Pet insurance? And now, of course, it's a real thing. Obviously, 1 in 4 people have it.
I wonder if the pet insurance is just passing the buck along if Nationwide's like, oh, yeah,
there's no doubt. And you know what? I mean, how many people talk about, what a pain in the ass insurance companies are from every state level, right? I mean, thank goodness I got like Chris Dorsey's State Farm team. And I mean, this is not health insurance, this is car insurance. And they're great as long as you don't need them. As long as you don't have a car wreck, they're fantastic. They're great. Then when you have a
tree, they cash those checks.
Well, sure they
day.
do. And when a tree comes through the living room, then all of a sudden they don't answer their phones. I'm not saying that about Chris Dorsey, by the way. He's fantastic. He's great. I've been with him for over 35 years. But yeah, this is one of those things where it sounds like a great idea, but it also sounds like, you know what it sounds like? It sounds like one of these old car companies that are now, it's basically a car insurance where they fix your car problems. If your car is over 100,000 miles or under 200,000 miles, they'll fix your radiator, they'll fix your, starter, they'll fix your combustion, blah, 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 blah. And you're paying that on top of whatever, or one of these things that takes care of old appliances. If your refrigerator goes out after 4 years, they'll, I forget what it's called, American Family Foundation Services or something.
Home
I don't know.
Shield.
Yeah, Home Shield. Yeah, exactly. And I'm kind of like, this is bullshit. I mean, what are we doing here? And knowing that you're probably never going to take advantage of it, but boy, that is a bad phone call when all of a sudden the AC goes out and it's 97 degrees, and you also got to chuck out $2,000 for it. So I mean, I can certainly see where that would play. Another interesting story, and by the way, he's Dr. Rab Stewart, Rossbridge Animal Hospital. Thanks for letting me be somewhat therapeutic today and talking about the situations I've been in through with one of my dogs. Is so happy that he's getting the care he needs there at the Rossbridge Animal Hospital, 208-0301, rossbridgevet.org.com. They're good on any platform. This is a great story, and it's a sad story all at the same time. But New York senior citizens this past week were given 31,000 of these. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't. I guess.
Animatronic robot dogs. And evidently it's because the UN Surgeon General has come out and said that we have an epidemic of communities and of older people that are in sheer isolation and in loneliness. And he says, I don't know how else to put it. It's loneliness and isolation. We have an epidemic of that with older people in this country, and they need something to keep them busy, and they need something they can. So they've created these furry little robots. They've given out 31,000 of them at nursing homes all throughout the New York area to help ensure these older folks have something to touch, something to pet, something to talk with. It acts like a real animal. The only difference is obviously it doesn't run around, it doesn't run out in the street, get hit by cars, and it doesn't need to be fed. But it will cry, it will bark. It knows some words, not only of encouragement, but of command words. Come here, boy. You can name it whatever you want. And I'm just thinking to myself, wow, this is so 2112. Like, you know what I'm saying? This is so. What was the Jetsons robot dog?
Astro.
This is so Astro to me, because I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh. We've got nursing home people now with robots to keep them company. I don't know what that says about our society. I don't know what to say about. I mean, I just like, and I've told my kids a million times, is like, if your daddy's ever in a nursing home, and you don't come see me at least once or twice a week, I will find you. I will come see you because I go around to nursing homes myself and speak with older folks is something that I do. It's my way of giving back, and I love it. I really enjoy it. I've gotten some wonderful relationships with a lot of people. It's difficult to do because there is a big, strong loss of life because you are talking to people they're in their 80s and 90s. I go to Danbury once a week. It's one of my favorite things to do. And you would not believe how these older people light up when they just have anything or anyone to give them attention. And now we're talking about 31,000 computer dogs that are doing the same thing in case of a human being. I think this has to do with, I think the COVID thing was the pure devil at his best. I really do. I think COVID was any disease that keeps us away from each other and we're not allowed to talk to each other. We can't see each other. We can't touch each other. It's created all these new laws. We got people now wearing masks. No one wants to touch each other. I'm in church and I can't even shake hands with people anymore. I have to fist bump, whatever it is. I mean, touching is one of our 5 major senses. Okay. We die without that. And the Surgeon General said, listen, if you sitting in a room and you're not touched over a period of time, you will die. And I don't think that registers. It like water. You can't go more than 4 days without water or you'll die. If you're sitting in a room for 7 to 8, 9 days and you don't get touched, you can die from that. And I don't think people realize that. And so whatever it takes, but I heard that story and I thought of you and I thought, man, how crazy is that? And I mean, we've got more pets now than we've ever had in this country. Your thoughts on that and just how important it is, because it's wonderful to have a pet cat or a pet dog, but you do have to have someone to take care of it. And a lot of senior citizens can't do that.
So who pees on the floor more, the robo dog?
There's no doubt. Well, or at least the dog could lick it up or clean it up or something. That'd be something. If you could turn it into like an iRoomba, and a pet dog, so it can actually clean up while it takes care of you, it'd be great. But yeah, it's sad, but I
feel like I understand like our way of life where, and in some ways it's really good that, we grow up, we leave the house, we do our own thing, we branch out, we make families of our own. But there are so many cultures that are multi-generational households. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of cultures that are now in this country that have brought that with them, like I have a lot of clients who are Indian, and they're multi-generational households. And it seems like it would be so enriching for everyone, for the elderly, but also for the younger generation in the household. It just seems like that they're always having a great time at home. And that's just not our culture in America. And I wonder what we are missing from that.
I think that I think that is a great, wonderful piece. Latinos are like that. Now we're going to have more Latinos in the South than we have African Americans, which is hard to believe. It's going to happen over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. I got a good friend of mine. His name is Jesus. He's a wonderful friend of mine. He's done a lot of work for me doing the radio station. He's a master builder and he does all these things, and lived off this little ranch with a mobile home with his family of 6 kids and his wife. He ran a landscaping service and he did all these things. And he recently moved into a 5-4 in Greystone. And I'm like, what? And he's like, dude, we had 7, 8, 9, 10 of us living in that home. Everyone was working. Everyone was doing their thing, roofers, whatever they wanted to do, the skill work. They bring all their money back home. They brought it here. He goes, have you looked at Hoover? Have you looked at areas of town where everything is now in Spanish? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, we're buying up everything. He said, we save our money. And he's laughing about it. And I'm like, it's true. I mean, it's so true. The minute we get some extra cash, we want to upgrade. Well, I deserve this. I work hard. I deserve a bigger car. I deserve, I need, my son deserves to go to a better college. I need to have a bigger house. They're sitting there with chickens in their backyard, living in a mobile home with 12 of them. And then, within a couple of years, they're buying up a 5-4 in Greystone. So you're right. I mean, and I think we're starting to learn that we're learning this as a culture because we're forced into it. And that is, we have more older folks now moving back home with us because we can't afford a place for a mom. I mean, and I saw my dad go through it. It was $3,000 a month. to take care of my mother for 6 years. Do the math. It's impossible. And then you hear the horror stories of these places where, you're paying by the month instead of the year. But maybe we can learn from something like that. I would love that. I would love if we could get forced to. Why do you think family gatherings are so special with the holidays? Yeah, we'll have a knockdown drag out. Uncle Phil, the creepy Uncle Phil, he's always going to be in the corner. But we can deal with him. But I mean, to live with that night in and night out, you probably learn a lot.
Yeah, and I don't think that it would be such a shock. I think that you would understand each other's idiosyncrasies. But at the same time, I've never been in that situation, and so I don't know how I would handle it. But I really do feel, for those elderly people that feel so alone, because I'm the only child of an only child, and I took care of my grandmother. Even before she got sick, I went and ate lunch with her every day every day I would go Monday through Friday, and she would make me lunch, and we would visit, and I'd be there for a couple hours. It was when I was working across town where you and I first met. Uh-huh. Monday through Friday, I was there with me, Mom, and she loved it. Yeah. And then when she got sick, I took care of her, and it was just a very sweet relationship that we had, and I think people miss out on that.
No, I totally agree with you. I wish we did more. I know that growing up, I did a lot of hospital work. My mom, thank the Lord, my mom forced me to do a lot of things that I didn't want to do from a giving back standpoint. She was a serviceable woman, and she did everything for the Lord and his care. And she had me doing, I was like a candy striper at Bethesda North Hospital, for 3 or 4 years. And then I did a couple other things. And we all have these preconceived notions of what it's like to walk through a nursing home and see all these old bodies, and they're drooling and they're making these weird noises and they're screaming, and it's like it's a whorehouse. I mean, it's scary. I mean, I remember seeing my grandma in this home, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is super creepy, super scary. And then when you get a little older, you realize, you may be one of those people that you're looking for a glass of water, and you just that's the only sound you can make, But then when you start to envelop yourself into their culture, into what they do and how they reach to each other, it's really special. And we got a lot to learn, man. I got a picture of Elka up on my wall, a young lady that, I say young lady, she was 83, who I had just a wonderful relationship over the last 3 years. I actually met her in my AA class, of all things. She had 52 years of sobriety, and we became best buddies. And I learned so much from her. She was a Cincinnati gal. I was a Cincinnati boy. We used to sit and just have conversations for hours upon hours. And I'm like, man, I wish I could have had this with a woman known as my wife. I said, if you were 50 years younger, I said, we'd be a thing. Unfortunately, she's like, you're too young for me. And I said, you're a little too old for me. But so we'll learn from that. So, hey, great stuff, Doc. Tell people how they can find you, man. You've been there for me, and I greatly appreciate you. Thank you for looking after my dog. I'll keep people updates on our social media. Let Frisco Dog know how he's doing. But tell people how they can get in touch with you.
You can call us at 208-0301. You can email us, rossbridgeanimalhospital@gmail.com, or you can sometimes find us on Facebook.
Sasquatch Toys and Comics is your place to go for all kinds of comics and toys, unopened in the box, collectible Star Wars, Legos, you name it, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever you got. If it's in your attic and it's unopened, bring it down to Sasquatch Toys and Comics down there on Citation Lane in beautiful Homewood. Of course, also don't forget Ed's Pet World. They've got everything. I got a chinchilla there several weeks ago. It is one of the coolest. I'll bring my chinchilla in when I come see Frisco. It's one of the coolest animals I've ever owned. It's called Gizmo. It's unbelievable. And of course, any other type of exotic pets, snakes, tarantulas, spiders, you name it, they got it. For bearded dragons, they've got it all down there at Ed's Pet World. Thank you so much, Dr. Rab. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, man. Anytime.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.